Clowns. They've been around forever and are still a fixture in pop culture today. No other character type seems to be as popular or as polarizing as the clown. A lot of people are terrified of them, but I'm guessing those people probably didn't click on this video. I have personally never been one of those people. That's me on my third Halloween. My brother and I both went through what you might call a clown phase. Maybe it was because McDonald's was having a hot streak in the 90s, or maybe it was from watching too many 1960s Batman reruns on TV Land. Whatever it was, we had clown fever for years. But why am I telling you this? Because that strange fascination is what got my mom to buy this. Clown TV. A bizarre kids show that feels like the product of a strange marriage between Sid and Marty Krofft and RuPaul. I don't know where she found it, but we were obsessed. We watched it all the time, and even took it with us on vacations. There was a time where I had this entire thing memorized, and when I watched it again recently, it all came rushing back to me. It's something that's so incredibly nostalgic for me, yet almost no one else knows it exists. When I started my research for this episode, I realized there was basically no trace of it online either. Where did this video come from? Who was responsible for it? Why has no one else ever heard of it? Turns out, the best way to find out is from the people who were actually part of it. This is the story of Clown TV. To truly understand the wackiness of Clown TV, you have to step into the mind of Jim Hool. Jim founded a children's theater company called Max's Playhouse, where they would perform original family-friendly productions which all featured a unique style and a positive message. Not only did Jim write and direct these shows, he also designed all of the costumes, an insanely impressive feat when you see just how elaborate they were. These shows were relatively small, with usually only a handful of people in the cast. Jim would have some actors play multiple roles because he thought it was theatrical and fun, but also because he couldn't afford to pay too many actors. They would perform these shows in small 50-seat theaters as well as tour them around school cafeterias in the Los Angeles area, sometimes doing 3 shows a day and reaching over 1,000 kids.
I'm always ahead of my time, it seems. I did Bugs and Pixar did Bugs, and then I did Dinosaur and Barney the Dinosaur came along, and then I did Cars and then Pixar did Cars.
Jim was approached by a department head from Cal State Northridge about designing some of their shows. He became a part-time faculty member and met a student named Terry Hastings, a composer who would become a frequent collaborator. Jim enlisted his help on rewriting the music for his Max's Playhouse shows, as well as an all-new original musical. A man named Peter Farkas attended a performance of their show Kid Dinosaur with his daughter, who instantly fell in love with the signature wacky style of Max's Playhouse. Peter, a successful video distributor, approached Jim Hool with an idea. He wanted him to create a children's TV show, but there was one catch. It had to be about clowns. I tried to find more about Peter Farkas on IMDb and was confused when I saw he only had one other credit to his name prior to Clown TV. Turns out there's a good reason for that.
Who this guy was or where he got his money, that I never knew. I only met the guy once.
Somebody has had to tell you by now what Peter's profession is.
He was a porn producer that wanted to do something for his children, so that's how Clown TV actually came about.
I would say that other than Clown TV, 100% of his line was not Clown TV.
Jim accepted the job and received a small budget from Peter Farkas to cover all the essentials. He worked with Terry Hastings on the story and script. They decided to set the show on a television station run by clowns, which would be a perfect scenario for parodies and make it easy to incorporate a lot of characters that were similar to those from Max's Playhouse. Neither of them had worked in television before, but luckily they knew plenty of actors and wouldn't have to worry about holding auditions. The cast would include Ross Kramer as Professor Smarty Pants, who ran the fictional clown television station. He was working at a restaurant with Terry Hastings at the time, who told him about this unique job opportunity. Elizabeth Swain played the role of Max, Smarty Pants' mute assistant who was considered the heart of the show. Pretty fitting when you remember that all of this started with Max's Playhouse. Philip and Stephen Ross played Oopsie and Poopsie, who host their own morning show and are constantly bickering with each other. The Ross twins had worked with Jim Hool before, including a production of Through the Looking Glass where they played Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Make a wish, blow out the candles, eat that cake! If you insist.
Heidi Gott, Renata Longmire, and Robin Roth played the Polka Dots, a trio of singers who would perform public service announcements and commercials. This was a character type that had sort of become a staple in Jim Hool's shows, and all 3 actresses had worked with him before.
This is your brain. This is your brain on Clown TV. Any questions?
Sam Zeller was brought in to play Tutu, a total diva who's obsessed with her pet poodle, but even more obsessed with talking about herself. Terry Hastings described the character as a mix between Dinah Shore and Martha Stewart.
Well, I'll bet you just can't imagine what life would be like without my show to brighten up your dreary little lives.
Rounding out the cast was Terry Ray as Nosy the Clown. Nosy was another self-obsessed clown who longs to be #1 in the ratings with his own low-budget talk show. He's constantly self-promoting his nosy cakes and nosy pies, instant pie in a can. Terry was no stranger to playing outrageous characters in Max's Playhouse productions, so Jim trusted him with writing much of Nosy's dialogue himself.
Oh, you are so kind. Really, don't stop. No, really, don't stop. Oh, you're so generous. I'm overwhelmed. I'm overcome.
You're overacting.
Now that the cast was in place, Terry Hastings was busy composing the music, and Jim was creating all of the amazingly cartoonish costumes. It was time for rehearsals. This would take place at Jim's house so that everyone would be ready to go by the time they went to film at a public access television studio. The shoot itself would only take about 2 days, and they had 2 30-minute episodes to shoot. That might not seem like a lot, but most of this crew had never worked in television before.
When I look at it, it's directed like a play. People walk into their interest. We don't just cut to them.
Most of the shoot went off without a hitch, other than a few minor hiccups. One of the polka dots had a malfunction with her microphone that forced them to have to redub all of her audio. Jim also told me about the camera operators that Peter Farkas hired. Let's just say they were less than passionate about the project. On the other hand, all of the cast members I spoke to had nothing but positive things to say about the whole experience. You could actually hear them light up when it was mentioned. Sam Zeller recalled everyone being super supportive and sticking around to watch each other's scenes being filmed. Much of the cast mentioned that they thought they could have very well been working on the next big thing in children's television. From concept to completion, the whole thing only took about 3 weeks. And that was it.
We would have made more of it at the time. We were so weird that I don't know that they thought anybody would buy it.
If I could go back in time again, I'd do a whole season of like 12 episodes on the same budget.
Peter Farkas reportedly liked the final product and shopped it around to different companies in Las Vegas, but that was the last thing anyone in the cast really heard about Clown TV. 3 weeks of creating this weird little show, and none of the cast knew if anyone had ever even seen it. Some of them received copies of the VHS, but most of them hadn't spoke to anyone about Clown TV until I reached out to them over 20 years later. After Clown TV, everyone went their separate ways. Jim Hool moved to Brazil for a short time, and he and Terry Hastings never worked together again. This might sound like a sad end, but in a way, it was sort of just the beginning. Nearly everyone involved with Clown TV continues to work in the entertainment industry. Clown TV may not be at the top of their resume, but it was a creative bond between all of these actors that all of them seem to cherish. So, where are they now? Stephen and Phil Ross are part of an all-male vocal group called the Poxy Boggers, performing outrageous and explicit drinking songs at Renaissance fairs and various venues across the country. Phil told me the dirtier they got, the bigger the audience got. Ross Kramer was hired to play another clown, Ronald McDonald. He was one of the many official Ronalds across the country and would perform at different events all around California, from Los Angeles Clippers games to local schools. He now works as a high school teacher, teaching functional skills to children with disabilities to help them when they graduate. Robin Roth and Heidi Gott are both currently performing in the Frozen musical at Disney's California Adventure. Sam Zeller is still working in theater, having performed on Broadway and in the national touring companies for Kinky Boots and Peter Pan, where he played Captain Hook alongside Kathy Rigby. Terry Hastings moved to Minnesota and continued to write his own musicals, including his own version of A Christmas Carol about a Betty Davis impersonator. He did a few more shows after that, but said it got too tiring to do theater. Quote, "It was fun, but it wasn't making any money." He became a professional photographer, which he still does today. Terry Ray is still writing and acting, both on-screen and in theater. He starred opposite a slew of classic television stars and recently wrote and starred in a play called Electricity, which was performed in a real-life hotel room in Palm Springs. No one in the cast knows what Peter Farkas is up to these days, but when Terry Ray contacted him about possibly getting Clown TV added to a streaming service, he had no interest. As for Jim Hool, he's now a high school theater teacher. He told me he's shown Clown TV to his students, but he preaches a very different message than he did when he was doing Max's Playhouse. He tells the students to set realistic goals for themselves rather than chase the impossible dream of stardom. He uses his own career as an example. Jim's getting ready for retirement now, but he does have one more original production he's been working on.
I've had a very successful life, even though it doesn't look so on paper. My husband had a famous expression back when I was a struggling artist that said, "Money is life's report card, and Jim, you're getting an F." Because money was the one thing that I was never really able to create with my work, because it was always fresh and very difficult to pigeonhole, and no one really knew what to do with us, so they didn't do anything.
Jim's work may not have been turned into billion-dollar Hollywood adaptations, but he's earned something even more valuable over the course of his career.
Jim was one of those people who was about 20 years ahead of his time, because if he was putting out clown drag in 2019, I think he'd get a lot more reception than he did back in 1993.
Now, looking back, I can see how lucky I was to be able to work with these geniuses that were doing all these crazy new, things with visually, and then with Terry's music. It was a really good collaboration.
It's been a project that we did with friends, and we were friends when we did it, and we were still friends afterwards, all these years later. So that's been cool too.
Clown TV may not have been a household name for most people, but it'll always hold a special place in my heart, and the hearts of those who worked so hard on it. Maybe audiences in 2019 would be more receptive to the crazy antics of Tutu, Nosy, Smarty Pants, and the rest of the gang. I guess we'll never know. Unless...
Now that after you brought all this up, Terry and I, actually, he lives not far from me now, and we're like, okay, are we ready to do it again? And we'll write the show 20 years later as if we've been doing it for 20 years.
I could see it all happening now. I mean, with those characters in 2019, it makes a lot more sense.
Hey, stranger wishes have come true.
And when you do, your wishes will come true for you.
Make your wishes come true.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the latest episode of Newstalgia. If you'd like to hear more about Max's Playhouse and Clown TV, you can listen to our podcast where I talk to Nosy the Clown himself, Mr. Terry Ray. You can find that in the description below. I'd also like to thank everyone from Clown TV for giving me so much of their time, especially Terry Ray, who helped me get in contact with everyone and really helped out with this video every step of the way. I'd also like to thank Jim Hool for sending so many great pictures. This video wouldn't be possible without all of you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.